Yeah,
Dr. Mukherjee, thank you for joining us today. We're so excited to talk with you a little bit more about the Florida Space Grant Consortium. Let's start off a little bit about what that is and what your role is with it.
Right. So the Space Grant is a congressionally mandated program in every state plus Puerto Rico and DC. And the main goal of the Space Grant program is to provide authentic STEM experiences for students. And this can vary by state. What do you mean by STEM experiences? In Florida, we provide fellowships to grad students, scholarships to students, internships to go to NASA centers. We provide support for students to build a payload that can be launched on any launch vehicle. It could be a weather balloon, it could be a simple rocket, it could be a sounding rocket, or it could go to the space station and so on. The idea is that students in their 4 years in college get a chance to build and fly something. Then we also, a flagship program is a research program where we provide funding to faculty to conduct research based on priorities of all 4 NASA mission directorates. But the idea is that the funds that we give to the faculty is not for them, but to hire students to do the research. So we want students in their, say, junior and senior years to start doing research and publish papers. So they get a leg up when they try to join grad school or go to industry. So that's the academia line. And for the others, we encourage them to work on these different projects, interdisciplinary projects, where we try to get science and engineering majors to work together on projects. And we do that by trying to focus on the freshmen and sophomore who come in. And so a couple of our programs are geared to them. We want them to come together. We choose students across the state, and they come to the Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex for about 4 days, and they build a payload that's launched in a weather balloon. So in four days, they do something, they build something that is launched, and we hope that excites them to go back to the schools, join student clubs, work on interdisciplinary projects, then go do seniors design projects, take part in NASA competitions. So it's like a chain. We focus on the sophomore and freshmen. We have programs for the seniors and the juniors, but the main goal is, if a person already has decided that you're going to do STEM, there's not much we can do for them, right? But if we can focus on the students who are on the fence and we try and put them and get them towards a STEM degree, then I think we have done something which is more meaningful, rather than just keep on supporting students whom we know are going to be successful in STEM.
Right.
So we try to do a mixed balance of both.
Right. Now, in my time, of course, I met you 20 years ago this year, I believe. It was 20 years ago. First year teaching. First time I ever took students to Kennedy Space Center, and I met yourself and Dr. Durrance, Sam Durrance, and that was a really memorable visit. Do you have any idea in your time at the Florida Space Grant Consortium how many student impacts or student lives that you directly and indirectly may have supported that are now probably in the aerospace or STEM workforce?
Well, I don't know. There has to be more than about 300 students, at least who I know of. I was just looking at my statistics. Over the last 5 years, we have supported more than 350 students. Just the last 5. Now, I do not know what every student is doing, but if you go back 20 years, it's more than thousands of students. I can think of at least 300 or 400 who I know hasn't. Well, it's not me who did the impact, but they had the opportunity to work on something which helped them go where they are. I cannot, or Space Grant cannot be solely responsible for their efforts. It's a combination of the department, of the mentor, we play a small role. We are one of the catalysts, I think.
Right.
So,
So-
more than 300, 400 students that I can think of, but I know there are more that have benefited from this space grant support. And this is a case not only in Florida, but we go across the nation and look at other space grants. It's the same story. Florida is a bit different in a sense. We already have a NASA center. So I would say a large part of the population, especially near the Space Coast and in bigger cities, are aware of NASA. So, it's not a big deal for them. But then if you go to some of the underserved areas, then it becomes a big deal if we talk about NASA. Now, if you go to some other states which don't have a NASA center, that space grant is their only connection with NASA.
Right.
But in Florida, I'm fighting. I'm competing with so many organizations that deal with space. I'm just one small part. There are a number of them, so it varies by state. But I know in Florida over the last 20 years, the space grant program has been successful in that sense that it has helped students. Especially, I can give you stories of students. There was one example of a student from now it's called Eastern Florida State College, but that time it was called Brevard Community College. And we used to have these 4-day academy programs. And this student, he was, not, I think he was in his 30s maybe, but he didn't get into the first selection because we had limited number of seats. But someone dropped out, and we brought him in because we thought, he deserved a chance. And believe me, he was one of the best students we ever had. And right now, then he went, and I think right now he's working at NASA with the computer science and the IT department. But before that, he got a chance to meet the president, Obama, when he was here at Kennedy. I got a call from the White House one day before president's visit to nominate 10 students to go and visit him. So, I had to scramble on that. He was one of them. He got a chance to meet him and talk to him. He's a great success story because he's not the traditional student who would go through their undergraduate degree. It was a bit different. So, and the other one is you, Kevin.
Yeah.
No, I know I'm talking to you and you're talking to me, but I believe that you are one of our success stories, and I show that in my fact sheet when I go to Congress or when I talk to others. And the reason I say you're a success is because you were able to do something to. I don't know what you do with the students. You obviously do something different than what others do. But these students which have gone through your program, whether it's in Jacksonville or now at West Palm Beach, they are doing things which college good students do not do. Whether it's building a CubeSat, whether it's building the bioreactor, but the things that they do are middle school kids or even high school kids who are building something and it's being launched, either as a CubeSat or to the space station or so on. So I think we need more teachers like you, more than people like me, because you can really somehow know how to work with students, and you have a way to do that. So I think you are one of our great success stories.
Well, thank you very much. And, as we mentioned before we started recording, the very first trip I took with students when I first started teaching was to visit your office and Dr. Durant's at Kennedy Space Center at the Visitor Center at the Center for Space Education building. I actually think the secret sauce is just get the students in front of the people that actually do the work, let them meet the engineers and the scientists, because that way they know for certain, or they have a better understanding of what that job looks like, what the people doing that work look like, so that they can decide if that's what they want to do or not, and make it as real as possible.
Well, I think a lot of times too, the kids, and I know that since I kind of joined in too, I had the same experience of, kind of going on some of these trips that he does and recognizing that aerospace is not just like, I'm going to be an astronaut and that's it. I think a lot of times people have that misconception. When we went to MIT, you know, and we toured the facilities there, I was taken aback by how little, even as an adult, I had a conception of what the industry was about. So that had I had that experience as a child, had I been able to go to a place like MIT, I might have thought that the opportunities for me were different because I didn't see myself as being, you know, an engineer. I didn't see people who looked like me, you know, female, in any of those roles in any of my science classes or anything like that. So I think it's the experiences and allowing them to see what's out there that really has made the difference.
Right.
I want to pivot back a little bit before I forget this question, because I know that you had talked about how through working with colleges, it's the students there and maybe even some of the teachers at the colleges who are able to apply. And I'm thinking about, as my son is about to head off to UCF, so I've been following a lot more about what UCF is doing. They seem to be doing a lot of work in aerospace that I had no idea that they were becoming quite as competitive as they were. I oftentimes think about like Embry-Riddle and maybe even FIT, but UCF's doing great work. So are some of the students I'm reading about ones who might be getting some of this grant money for some of the research that I've seen, like medical stuff in space and all kinds of aerospace stuff recently?
Right. So, you know, more than a quarter of the employees at Kennedy Space Center are UCF graduates.
I did not know that. That's a good testimony right there.
Right. Yes, UCF is really diversified. You know, I came here 20 years ago. It was very different. Right now, you know, you have a great NASA center called CLASS, which is the Center for Lunar and Asteroid and Surface Sciences. And because of the Artemis mission and focusing on the moon, that center is really very, very important. It's playing a big role. And it's not just UCF that the center is located at UCF. It's kind of virtual, but you have people all over the world as members. So that's one niche that UCF has in terms of planetary sciences. You have people in the physics department who are taking part in NASA missions, like the Austerlitz mission and then other asteroid missions. That is one part. Then from the engineering, you know, you have a lot of people working on materials and so on. You know, trying to have some materials on spaceships that can mitigate the dust, the lunar dust or lunar regolith. And then now they're joining the medical field now. So you have a College of Medicine. That's still in its infancy, the medicine and space medicine, but they're going to also diversify. So yes, they're really progressing very rapidly. And I would say only UF is a bit better than UCF right now. Embry-Riddle and FIT are great, but they're very small.
Right. Well, I mean, I was just amazed because I went there so long ago that, of course, it wouldn't have even been on my radar. But when we toured and then I started following, I went, this is amazing to see the amount of work. But what I love is that they're collaborating. So what I found while working with Kevin and our students is that, you know, you get these kids who think that they're not sciencey, but there is something for them in STEM. And the way that the UCF departments seem to be finding a way, I bet you're going to have space law pop up there at some point too. Because I mean, essentially, every industry can be represented in aerospace. That's the thing that I've really learned from it.
Right. Space is so broad now. It doesn't have to be astrophysics, aerospace engineering. It could be architecture. You know, civil engineering is playing a big role. So I'm getting a lot of proposals from civil engineering departments. Space medicine is playing a big role. Psychology. It's so varied that you have so many options right now. So when you think of space, it's could be anything. And then we shouldn't forget, as you said, Kevin, when you visited KSC, there are some other opportunities. You know, you have this 3D printing. You have technicians. I think they play a bigger role than a lot of other people ever know. In what they do. They are the ones who are there every day, being sure that this part is working right, that part is working right. So I think that's another avenue. You know, everyone does not have to get a degree, go through a college and get a degree, like undergraduate degree. They can somewhere in between try and join a technical school or a technical college, and they can do great.
Absolutely. when we did the vibration testing for our first CubeSat in 2018 at Kennedy Space Center, I don't think any of the folks we worked with were engineers. They were the guys running the vibe test facility, and I would call them technicians, and they were outstanding. We had a wonderful experience there. I'd like to shift gears just a little bit and talk about two more things. One, about the membership and Space Grant, but let's start with your role in calling on Congress with your fellow Space Grant directors and how the interplay between what you have to do once the president's budget comes out every year and this little dance between you and your fellow directors and Congress and OMB and organizations like that.
So it's a bit easier for us. The reason is because there is a space grant in every state. So you have this support. So every state would like to see their state being supported from NASA. So because there's a program in every state, and we go and just talk about the stories, things that you do, Kevin, the things of the students who, the congressmen or the senators, they get excited, they support a program. So since every director is doing this, there are 52 such jurisdictions. Both parties, Republicans and the Democrats, have been super supportive of Space Grant for the last 20 years, I remember, and both the Senate and the House. So we have support from both aisles, both parties, and it helps because there's one program in every state. And that's why when the president's budget zeroed out NASA education for the last 4 years, Congress put it back in because they saw the value of what Space Grant is doing, what NASA education is doing. Now, through Space Grant, because there's higher education, we can provide better metrics.
Right.
When you go to K to 12, it is very difficult to come up with metrics to show the success. It is very, very difficult due to legal reasons, to trying to track them and other things. But for college students, we can do that. So we can provide good metrics, we can provide good stories. So it's very easy for us to convince Congress about the importance of the program. And then we also do that for the whole NASA education or Office of STEM engagement. So the last 3-4 years, we are focused both on the Space Grant and the Office of STEM engagement, so that if our budget is increased, then the Office of STEM engagement budget is also increased. The extra funds doesn't have to come from some other program. So, and that has worked over the last 4 years.
Right. And I have to tell you, 15 years ago, you invited me to come with you to talk to our local delegation. And I think I suggested, hey, let's bring a student. And because of that, almost every year in the past 15 years, not only have I called on DC and then now Tallahassee, but our students have. And then as my colleagues have gotten involved, other teachers, now we end up with students working with legislative offices to actually create real legislation or resolutions on the House floor. So all of that began from you simply inviting one teacher to go with you to talk to Congress about aerospace and supporting, NASA's budget. So I think that's a great legacy right there. Just that in itself.
And also the fact that someone in Congress, the staffers, are more eager to listen to students than people like us.
Oh, absolutely.
So when we took, I don't know who it was, we took one student, I forget his name, but it was a great success because they were just listening to the student tell his story. And I'm glad to see that the students do understand as a part of NASA, a part of the science culture in the United States, is knowing how to tell a story to Congress or how to tell a story to someone in the street. Yeah. And the kids are doing it at this age. By the time they go to college, it's a big difference. And that's a problem I'm seeing with students in colleges right now, especially if you're a freshman or a sophomore. They are very reluctant to go and talk even to their fellow students about their projects. If they get that experience in school, once they come to college, they have that, they are one step ahead of the other students. So I always tell that to the students. You have to do something that keeps you one step ahead of the rest of the population. I don't know how you do that, whether it's, whether you study harder or whether you take part in more interdisciplinary projects, anything, but try to be one step ahead of the other students. And
Absolutely.
in your case, that's a fine, right? The students are.
It was interesting when I kind of got on board with it, and I knew that they were going off to speak. Remember, my role was more like, I'm going to prepare you for a debate tournament or maybe to speak. So it was a learning experience for me too. The first time I went, to realize that this is definitely more of a conversation. So you have to know your content and how you deliver it with a congressperson. I thought for sure we weren't going to be able to do it, but it worked out because we figured out a way to, if the kids could figure out how to at least have a talking point, but then to learn to be, I know it seems weird to rehearse being conversational, but that's something that we've done. And this year, I think, is my favorite year. We had high schoolers who have done this before, who now came back and trained our middle school kids that were, newbies, or ones who had worked for the Tallahassee trip. And we just stepped back. And this is the first time we've actually just kind of supervised from afar and said, let's see what happens. And they did such a great job, even though it was virtual.
They really did. I divided Florida into 4 parts, 4 teams, 1 high school leader for each team. And they made their own appointments. In the past, I would call and make all 29 appointments. And I just, she's right. They did it as middle school students, and now as high school students, they're
leading it. And they learned, I think, what kind of skill is that? Having to be to persevere until you get an appointment. I mean, they would get frustrated, like we couldn't get a hold of somebody. So you learn you have to try another avenue. You don't just say, well, they didn't email me back. How do you go around that? So the life lessons, I think, that are part of something like going and speaking to your legislators, realizing that we're part of the legislative process. Most of us think that we're not at all related to what goes on in DC, but we have that right to go and speak. And when kids can do it.
And on top of that, they have content. They have a subject area that is both inspiring and interesting and sort of unique. Like you said, how do they become distinctive? Well, they're the only kids of a certain age doing a certain thing with aerospace.
Yeah.
That I think also gives them a little extra gas in the tank. So I would like to ask.
Before you go ahead, Kevin, both of you, if you go ahead, I think the story has to be told to the others, because that is one avenue where I think you're the only school in the country doing it. So I would suggest, and I'll see if I can arrange for you to talk to the National Space Grant, maybe in October, November, I forget when it is. But you should tell a story, because this is very different than what most other schools do. Apart from the fact your kids are building CubeSats, but this policy issue that you have been tackling is very, very different. I think others need to be told so that they can do it in their states.
That's right.
Just let us know when and where you need us. We'll be glad to support that. So my follow-up, or a little different question, is, we mentioned Florida Space Grant at the beginning, and you have been the director for at least 15 or 20 years?
15 years, yes.
15 years you've been the director, but you were a part of it even before, right?
So for 25 years, yeah.
Yes. So could you speak just a little bit about the members, the organization members, and maybe how you and perhaps some of your faculty or faculty at other universities maybe work together sometimes?
So our members are made up of all the 10 state universities, 4 of the major private universities, 2 or 3 4-year colleges. And then we have Orlando Science Center and the Kennedy Space Center, the Astronaut Memorial Foundation, and Space Florida. So most of them are universities and colleges. And so we have a representative from each of these universities, and they form an advisory board. So we meet twice a year to discuss about the programs, what we need to do. So what we get are ideas from a top-notch university like University of Florida or University of Central Florida, and also the smaller colleges like Florida Gulf Coast, University of West Florida. We get ideas from them. So we are a representative of the state of Florida, not just UCF or not just UF. And that's very important, because if we tend to focus on 4 or 5 major universities, then we are just, I won't say feeding the pipe, we are just not even strengthening, we're just adding to the pipeline. But we are not actually putting in new members or new students in. So I think one of the reasons why our Space Grant, Florida Space Grant, is successful is because of the support that we get from the 21 affiliates. They are very, if they criticize, very constructive. I've not seen, University of Florida or FIT Embry-Riddle say, hey, it's not supporting my university so much, or this program is not for my university. I never heard that statement over the last 15 years that I've been the director. So we all know that we are representing the state of Florida, and we're trying to build programs that can help not only just the big major universities, but also students in the smaller universities. And as a result of that, we have support from Space Florida. Space Florida, as you know, is a quasi-government entity. And because we are not just focused on one university and we're working on the universities, it's very easy for them to justify to the state legislature that, look, they are supporting universities across the state. So they provide us funding for the research program.
Right.
So that's how we work with the faculty.
Yes, I just think back over the 2 decades of some wonderful programs that I got a chance to use from Space Grant, Radio Jove. I know you have the university CubeSat competition. You had some mining competitions. I think about the protein crystals in space. I think about all these fantastic student experiences that I know have impacted kids that I worked with that are in the STEM workforce now. So I am very glad to, I'm really glad to showcase you and your program on our podcast today. So,
well, and I guess I get the last question, and really I always try to end with something that is kind of like, if for our listeners out there who want to get involved, and I think about the people who are heading off to university. So what advice do you have for a student who might just be getting out into college this year? They may be a little fearful of getting involved. They may not even know what they want to do. So what do they need to know in order to really maximize their time and maybe their research ideas there?
Well, I think if you're a freshman in a college, join a student club. You start that way. The simplest thing that you can do. There are a number of student clubs. You can go to the website and check the student clubs. You join there. When you join the student clubs, you know what other students are doing across the university. Second is, if you know what you would like to do, and maybe you don't. If you don't know what exactly you want to do, try and do a number of projects to see what you're most comfortable in. But then try and have kind of a mentor. It could be your course teacher. It could be a student or grad student. It could be the Space Grant director. It's anyone. It's always good to have a mentor that you can talk to. So as you said, when there are very, very few women in classes, in engineering classes, and they are really concerned, and if they have something to talk about, whom they go to. So one thing to do, and I'm trying to do that across the universities, is to get mentors, women professional mentors for these students in universities, because it makes a big difference for them. Simple thing, this is the questions I've got, is what do I wear to go to a conference?
Yeah.
And I'm talking from a woman's side.
No.
What do I wear,
Of course.
And you don't think about that. But if you can talk to someone who's a woman professional, you have issues in the lab, with male. You talk to someone, a woman who can talk to you. So you try to find a mentor. And I'll tell every student, at least in Florida, if they go to a Florida college, if they have anything, is to contact me. And I can then get them in touch with someone I know at the university. They're free to contact me if they don't have anyone else in their university. But do what you would like to do. And the other thing I would say is that, 90% of the time, if you do what you want to do, you are successful. You can get. But if you think that, after trying two or three times that you have not been able to do exactly what you want to do, just just try and do something else for some time and then come back to it. You don't want to waste your life just trying to just get into one thing if you can't get it, if you think you cannot get it. So I know you hear this advice from everyone saying, follow your heart and you go and do it. Sometimes it's not practical. So you think about that too, just, you might have diversify a bit, but then come back again. Don't forget about it.
Right. That's great. Thank you so much for spending time. It was always great to catch up with you. And I know that we'll continue to do that again soon. So anything else? That's it?
No, it's been, I've known you for 20 years now, and you have been a true friend to education in the state of Florida. So I appreciate that. We thank you for your time.
So thank you for what you do, both of you.
Thank you.